I really want to touch on a few things like mindset and pushing yourself beyond what you consider your comfort zone to being. I feel a bit surreal at the moment because I have just completed my first endurance event. I'm not eating much after. I wasn't that hungry, and I'm sort of floating on cloud 9 at the moment. In fact, maybe, you can probably provide some answers for me. So given that I've just done it, let me ask you a few questions, right? So the event I did today was the SwimRun experience event, right? So put in context, I've never swam in open water before. I do swim a couple of times a week at my local pool. Maybe I'll do 300-400 meters, but normally after each 50 meters, I'll stop and just, have a little breather. It was the power of the community today that persuaded me to do this. So I swam about 1.8K today in open water, and I probably ran about 9K. Again, I only run about 5K once every 2 weeks or so. So well beyond my comfort zone, and doing the events one after the other is something I've never done before. But here's the funny thing for me. I started off with a 100-meter open water swim. That was a short one, and I thought, that'll be fine. I can swim 100 meters. Halfway into that, I start to panic. My partner said to me, "Rongan, you're hyperventilating. Just try and slow down your breathing." But I couldn't. So, what was going on there? Because in that 100-meter swim, I was thinking, there is no way that once I've done the next run, I can swim the 500 meters when I'm really far away from land, or the 1K. And weirdly enough, the 500 meters and the 1K was absolutely fine, but I couldn't do the 100 meters. So what was going on there?
Do you know what? I love what you said there, because basically I think a lot of the principles that I experienced on the Great British Swim, it was an extreme example, but it's absolutely applicable. So everything that you just described there, I was experiencing through the 150 days at sea. I think when you start looking at Tim Noakes and his work on central governor theory, he basically proposed this idea that fatigue is an emotionally driven state that we use to pull the physiological handbrake. And what he meant by that was when you are 60 miles into a marathon, you think, I cannot go on. My lungs are on fire, my legs are burning, I cannot go on. There's no way. All of a sudden, 25 miles in, you see your family and friends and everyone's clapping, you see your kids at the finish line, and you sprint, all the way to 26.2 miles, and you heroically cross the line, because Tim Noakes proposed that this idea of fatigue being an emotionally driven state, we use it because it's basically our brain, which is incredibly manipulative, which is trying to, just because it's trying to self-preserve, it's this inbuilt self-preservation mechanism that is saying, whoa, you're not safe, fight or flight, just saying you're not safe, wrong, and you're not safe. And it was exactly the same, that when you got in the water today, all of a sudden, central governor theory, your body started to go, whoa, 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 it's cold, you're hyperventilating, get out of the water,
I can't see the bottom.
Yeah, everything was screaming out, and it's a primitive inbuilt self-preservation mechanism.
So would you say an appropriate response?
Absolutely, but you have to understand we're still wired like our ancestors. So that exact mechanism would have protected us, and we would have ran from a saber-toothed tiger or anything. Now, we don't have a saber-toothed tiger to worry about, but instead, we're actually voluntarily putting ourselves in those positions. And even though we're voluntarily doing it, the mechanisms are still there. They're still exactly the same. So I think once you know this idea, Tim Noakes also expands on it a little bit and talks about this idea of anticipatory regulation. And what he means by this is knowing now that you are far more powerful than your own mind allows you to believe. So when you said, okay, how far could you swim this morning? How far can you swim and run this morning? You would say to me, oh, Ross, self-preservation mechanism. You would have gone, oh, maybe 5K. And that is just your body saying, do you know what, Rongan? That will keep you safe. You're not going to go to complete exhaustion. You're not going to hyperventilate. You're not going to suffer from hypothermia. 5K. Anticipatory regulation. The reality is you're so much more powerful than even your own mind allows you to believe. And we're now only just understanding this in terms of sports psychology. So what you've experienced now is this kind of oh, wow, this cathartic sense of I'm safe. There was that fight or flight biochemically, all sorts of things. There was an orchestra of things going on inside of your body. Neurotransmitters, chemical signals in the brain, everything was firing, going, whoa, what are you doing? And now you've come out the other end and you've gone, wow, I did survive that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a huge reward as well. You look at serotonin, dopamine, everything just dumped in your brain to go, you're safe now. You're safe.
You've just hit the nail on the head. Our minds put on the limiting factor to what we can achieve. And I really want people who are listening to this who think, well, I don't really want to do a swim run event, or I don't want to swim around the UK. Well, what would you say to them?
Yeah, that you're right. It's all completely relative. And I love what you said there, that the next frontier of human performance is in the mind. Previously, we looked at the human body, we looked at our physiology, and we looked at it in terms of almost like a simple mechanical approach. We'd look at lactic threshold, VO2, lung capacity. We'd start looking at that. The best example I can always think of is Roger Bannister. At the time, people said with Roger Bannister, you cannot run under a 4-minute mile. Simply cannot be done. Leading physicians at the time were saying, physiological malfunctions, your heart will explode. Like, it cannot be done. Roger Bannister was also a medical student himself, but still laced up his trainers and, Oxford ran the first sub 4-minute mile. Once he did, the number of people running a sub 4-minute mile the year after was incredible. It wasn't because there was an advancement in nutrition, technology, nothing changed. It was just because collectively we'd recalibrated the human mind to know what we were now capable of.